In this section, we're going to dive deeper into the 5 forms that you'll be filling out in district court. The first form is the summons. And the importance of the summons is it puts the other party on notice that you're filing this lawsuit for dissolution of marriage against them. It tells them they have 30 days to respond, and if they don't, you'll default against them. In addition, the form is going to lay out if there's any real estate that the 2 parties have. And the important piece about that is make sure you get a proper legal description. And you're not going to find that on your tax assessor form. It even tells you on that form that it's not a proper legal description. So you want to go down to your county recorder's office and get a copy of the deed. That has got the proper legal description. And the reason is that if you don't get the legal description right, you could end up having to amend your judgment and decree, and the county recorder's office refusing to accept the document to transfer title of the property to the other person. So that is really important to get that legal description correct. Then also contained in that form is going to be all the statutory language that both of you need to know. So it is really important that you read the document yourself, the summons, the actual summons. And it's going to tell you that you can't, get rid of any property without the permission of the other party unless it's for necessary generation of income or in the ordinary course of life. And it also sets out that if you're parents, that you have to take a co-parenting class, which we're going to be discussing in Module 4. So that's the summons. The next document is the Certificate of Representation. This is just a 1-page form, and it lets the courts know who the parties are, names, addresses, phone numbers, who the attorneys are, their names, addresses, phone numbers, and attorney IDs. And nowadays, you should also include your email address on that, because so much of our filings and things like that are being done electronically. Then the next form is the confidential information form. This is controlled by Rule 11.03 of the General Rules of Court. And the reason I'm mentioning it, the confidential information form literally states what the party's social security numbers are, and someone realized in the last 20 years that perhaps that shouldn't be a public document. And so when you file that form in district court, they actually put it in a manila a manila envelope, and it's sealed and no one can look at it except the judge. But that's the purpose of the confidential information form. It's so the court knows definitively that you are who you say you are, and that who the parties are and who the parties' children are. The next form is the petition. Now, its purpose in court is it gives the court the basic information regarding the party's circumstances and the relief the party is requesting. So the first part of the petition is the caption. And the caption, you want to make sure you have the district correct and that you have the county correct. There are 10 judicial districts in Minnesota, and so you want to make sure it's correct. And then there are 87 counties. Now, the reason that's important is I had a case, and I've had a couple cases, and unfortunately, I used to live in Spring Lake Park. And Spring Lake Park, a portion of Spring Lake Park sits in Ramsey County and a portion sits in Anoka County. And so if I had gone and filed my divorce in Anoka County, I actually was living in the Ramsey County part of it. Anoka County would have said, well, wait a minute. Again, we don't have venue of that. It's not proper. And I've had a couple cases in the last 20 years where we filed it in the wrong county and they kick it out. They say, nope, dismissed, but they keep the filing fee. So in my case, I had to eat the cost of the new filing fee in the correct county. So don't make the same mistake we did. Make sure you have your district correct and your county, and that's in your caption. So the next substantive section in your petition is the jurisdiction details. And understand that in order to bring your divorce in Minnesota, you have to have your residency, which means where you live, for at least 180 days. And you're swearing that this document is true and correct. So probably no one is checking on it, but make sure you meet the residency requirements, because the other party could ask to have the petition dismissed if the residency is wrong. Then the next section is military service. Just understand there is a Service Member Civil Relief Act of 2003 that's in effect. And so if either of you are currently, you have to be on current duty in the service, you have some additional protections, and it could mean that that the respondent, if they're the ones that are in the service, they could ask to have it continued for a few months. And that's the basic reason the court wants to know whether either of you are subject to this particular act. Then the next section is venue. And venue has to do with what is the convenient forum. And in Minnesota, what the courts care about is it the residence of the petitioner or the respondent where this is being filed? And I guarantee you that if you both live, if one of you lives in Anoka and one lives in Hennepin, and you try and bring this action down in, Shakopee, which is Scott County, they're going to go, why are you bringing it here? And unless you have a good reason, they're not going to accept it. They're going to kick it out and you're going to lose your filing fee. So just understand that generally venue is going to be where either of you are living. And then let's talk about what it means to file the paperwork. So when I talk about filing as an attorney, I have to use electronic filing of all of my pleadings with the court. And that's really, that's the only thing available to me. But if you're a self-represented person, you can actually do in-person filing. There is a desk. So you just go to the local county courthouse and you go up to the desk, you have your filing fee with you, make sure you've made a copy of your pleadings, and then serve one of the copies. I'm sorry, I use the word serve, but what you're doing is you're basically handing it to the clerk. And they're going to take that and your filing fee, they'll assign you a court file number. They may not do that immediately, but understand that that's what it means to file it in district court. And you can check out the Judicial Branch website if you have any further questions on where to file your divorce. So then the next important form, and really sort of the basis for bringing this DIY divorce workshop, is the preparation of the stipulated findings of fact, conclusions of law, order for judgment, judgment and decree. I'm going to call it the J&D from here on out. Understand that even though that's a really long title, it's one document, although that document can be anywhere from 20 pages to, 35 pages long. So it is a really important document. This is the document that forms the contract to end your marriage. And so it governs all your rights and responsibilities regarding your marital situation going forward. So it is a really important document. My hints for you are make sure it's accurate as to the facts. That is, people come to us and they've gone and they've filed these things themselves. And then it turns out that they didn't get any of their facts correct and they're missing things. We've had one recently come through our office where the parties had neglected to report 3 of their retirement accounts on it. And in those cases, you're looking at potentially having to reopen the divorce. And that is messy, and the courts can refuse to do it. So it is very important that you make sure you're as accurate as can be as to the facts. Then make sure that the order reflects the action steps needed to divide the property. So like getting refinancing, changing titles to vehicles and the house, and any other item that needs action after the divorce. You want to make sure that those action steps are included in that divorce decree, because what's going to happen is that if the other side then doesn't comply with that court order, you want to be able to go back to court and ask the court to take action. Well, if there's nothing in there, you run the potential that the court's going to say, you don't have any consequences. So it is really important that you include those things. And I'm just giving you some tips to think about. And obviously, the more complex your divorce is, the more you have these questions, it certainly makes sense to be checking with an experienced family law attorney and asking for advice on those particular subjects. Then one of the things you can use, what I do even, is I will use my petition to act as my guide to make sure that I've included everything in the stipulated judgment and decree. And so you can do that. This is just a hint for you on how to make it easier in your drafting. So that's the conclusions of this section. We have, hopefully by now, you know where you can locate your forms and you know what forms you need. So now we're going to move on to discussing what to put in the forms in order to get your divorce. And that's going to be in our next module.